Hello everybody and thank you for joining me. This is Ciara from Ciara T Designs and today I have another really cool alcohol ink card to share with you. So let's jump right in. So I am going to cut down a piece of Yupo. I cut this down to be A2 size, which is 4 1/4 by 5 1/2. And I'm also going to cut the black mat down to be an A2 size as well. I could have at this point cut them down to be the size that I normally would. However, this card is going to test me in ways I was not expecting, and we're going to have to pivot a lot of times to make this card kind of come together. So bear with me. I'll walk you through the mistakes I made and how I fixed them, because I think that that's important, and you'll kind of see where I made my missteps. So to start, I am working at the A2 size, as I said. And I'm going to bring in several different colors of alcohol inks. Of course, they are all Tim Holtz. Those are the ones I own. So that's what the brand is. But the colors are altogether raspberry is the pink, sunshine yellow, cool Peri, purple Twilight, Patina, cloudy blue, and celestial is a pearl. And I made this card with the intention of using the alcohol ink, like the alcohol lift ink. I had a question recently, a comment on a different video asking about it, and I own it and I have never tried it. So I, thought, well, let's bust it out and see what it's all about and use it. So now normally a good idea, and don't do as I do. I mean, you don't have to do as I say either, but a good idea is to, watch Tim Holtz tutorials or demos and see how his products work. That would have been a great way for me to do this because I had never used the alcohol lift ink before. I've owned it forever. I've owned it since it came out. But I love to make alcohol ink backgrounds, and then I don't stamp on them as a general rule. I kind of usually add die cuts or let them just be as they are, and I love them. Well, I didn't watch the tutorials or his demos. I just went in thinking like I've stamped several inks several times. Like I've got this, I can do this, no problem. Well, that's not necessarily true. So we're going to stumble a little bit and we're going to fix it. And it's going to turn out to be that stunning card you saw in the beginning, but it will take a lot of different steps and missteps to kind of get there. So keep that in mind. I thought that I could create this. So this background, the intention with this background was to kind of have the yellow, pink, and the purple together as like the floral idea. And then the greens and bluey color are supposed to be more like leaves. Like that's kind of what I envisioned in my head. That's what I was going for with this specific color palette. That's not how it turns out, but that's what I was thinking. So that's why I picked those colors. So here you can see I have the Tim Holtz Floral Trims stamp. This is probably one of my favorite stamps by him. I love it. I use it all the time. And you can see that it looks used because it has been used. But I swear to you, I cleaned this stamp several times before I went to use it. I used stamp cleaner. I used my stamp chamois. Like I tried really hard to get this stamp as clean as I could. However, you're going to see in a second that it was not clean enough. And after watching his demo, because I did go back while I was making this, right after this part, I went and I watched his demo so that I could see what I was doing wrong, because there was obviously something I was doing wrong. So I kind of buffed off the stuff because I know that's what you do. And then I brought in a piece of my HammerMill cardstock and I'm going to stamp down the transfer and see, what we're working with, what's going to happen here. Well, you can see that it is very dirty. And that's fair because I use black ink with most of my stamping. So it's not good. This is not good. So that's okay. I'm going to remake my background. Not a problem. Yupo and alcohol inks are very forgiving in this sense. So I actually just added a little bit of blending solution over the area that I had stamped with the alcohol removal ink or alcohol lift ink. And then I'm just going to redo my background. It's going to be, slightly different than what I created. And no, sorry, this is when I started watching his tutorial or his demo on alcohol lift ink. And in the beginning, he starts by making backgrounds. So at this point, I'm watching him make backgrounds and I'm making my background and I'm like, let's add all the things, all the color, all the texture, all the interest. Well, I find out as I watch his demo that with the lift ink, a more solid image stamping is easier to see. Also, you probably don't want a whole bunch of stuff going on, kind of like I have here. You're kind of maybe better to bring in, 2 inks or 3 inks and kind of have them be a little bit smoother than what I have going on here. And now obviously, as with everything, practice will show progress. And I have never used this stamping ink before. So with that, I'm kind of just guessing what I'm doing. And of course, if you guys have watched some of my other alcohol ink videos, I really like texture. Texture to me is just one of the most exciting things that you can add. And so I'm going to splatter on some isopropyl alcohol to this background to just create these really cool cells and this really neat interest. And the problem with that is that I don't think you can get the lift ink to go over that nicely because you've moved the ink away, right? So again, totally a learning experience, totally on me. But at this point, I'm just creating this really fun background. In my head, that's what I'm doing. So then I pull the other image out of the trims stamp set. I've never used this one. I've never used it to stamp. So I'm thinking, okay, perfect. I've never used it. It can't be dirty. So we're going to use it to stamp on top of my panel. And at this point, he hadn't gotten to using the ink yet. He was making backgrounds. So I'm still thinking like, I've got this. This is good. I've got a clean stamp now. I've redone my background. I love my background and we can do this. So I'm going to stamp it. I'm going to give it good pressure. I'm going to let it sit there for a second. This is sped up, so it looks like I just lifted instantly, but I did let it sit there. And I'm like, okay, now we take it out. We leave it for a minute. We flip this bad boy over because paper has two sides, and we're going to stamp this down and see what we've lifted. And the lift on this one is very pretty. I don't know what I'm going to do with it. I actually set it aside because I want to do something. I'm not totally sure what yet. So that's really pretty and I love how that came out. And I'm like, okay, now we're going to dab this and then lightly buff it and see what we're working with. Well, in person, I can see it. While I'm editing this, I don't see it very well. You can see, little lines here and there, but you can't really see it. And I'm like, okay, what am I going to do to pull this card together? And you can see like I tap my fingers. I'm like sitting here pondering, what the heck do I do now? Okay, we're going to pivot. No problem. I am going to white heat emboss the floral image back on top of some vellum, and then I'm going to trim out just the 3 florals because I don't want to hide my background, but I really want the florals to be what you see. That's what I'm going for, so that is where I want your eye to go. So I'm like, okay, no problem. I've got this. I'm going to white heat emboss this, and then I'm going to trim it out. We got this, no problem. All right, so that's what we're going to do. And you know what? That worked beautifully. Though I had hoped, to have it be a little more prominent with the ink lift. However, realistically, I think that ends up being a bit more of a background technique anyways. So it wasn't going to pull for my floral anyway. So this is just how we're going to pivot, and that's okay. And I'm sorry the cord is dangling in the way. I've taken to hanging my heat tools on the wall with like some command hooks. So I didn't pull enough cord out, so it kind of is in the way there. So sorry about that, but that's why it's like that. So I have this heat resistant vellum, and I'm like, perfect. I'm going to cut the florals, and I cut everything else out. I only want the florals. So I actually bring in the stamp here in a second. I had to pause here a second to make sure that I'm actually cutting just florals, because it is florals and leaves. That's the whole image. And you're going to see me move the stamp in a second here because I couldn't tell where I was supposed to be cutting. But I had to pull the stamp in here, so this is where I can see it. And now I know I'm cutting just the floral images out. And I'm like, okay, this is going to be perfect. I'm going to adhere this on top, just those 3 florals. They'll be kind of in the upper left-hand corner. That'll give me my focal image, and we'll, build our design around that. Like, this is going to be great. So that's now what I'm thinking. And it does work. However, when we get to the sentiment, I'm going to stumble again. And now, out of fairness, at this point, when I start to stumble, I have watched the video. I have watched Tim Holtz tutorial or demo on, the alcohol lift ink and alcohol Yupo and whatnot, because I am using Yupo for this. And an apology for my video Thursday. I called the other paper black Yupo. It's not black Yupo. It's black matte alcohol ink cardstock. That's why my inks react so much differently than what I expected, because it isn't actually Yupo. I just call it that. So sorry for that confusion. But yeah, no, there is no black Yupo. And I have found personally with trying different cardstocks and whatnot, the Yupo gives you the best flow and movement. So you can use the glossy cardstocks and whatnot, but personally I have found that you get a way better flowing background, if that's what you're looking for, out of Yupo paper. So if you've never tried it, try some if you can, and see. Because I mean, you can buy, like, Yupo is just a brand, right? You can purchase whatever Yupo you want. But I find that it gives me way more flow with my alcohol inks than the other cardstocks. And then, so here I'm going to adhere it. And I adhered it in the flower centers because I didn't want my glue to show through the vellum. So I intentionally made sure that it was just in the center of the flowers, as I'm going to cover those up, and because that's where the embossing is the heaviest. So this point, this is when I realized that I have not cut my card down to be any kind of layers. This would just be the full front. And there's no problem with that. You could absolutely leave it that way, but you guys know I like to give everything a border. I like the layered look. It just gives it a little more finished look, to my opinion. So I like that look. And I had originally left the Yupo and the black mat as A2 because I was going to bring in the deckled edge trimmer and give it that kind of more organic edge. But as I stumbled along, I went back to just using my straight trimmer and calling it a day. So at this point, Tim Holtz has told me that I can use archival ink to stamp on Yupo. It didn't work at all. I would stamp it and it would kind of half-ass stamp, and then it would, like if I had stamped again, it would lift the ink that I'd put down, and I'm like, okay, no problem. I have stays on. I'm going to try my stays on then. Nope. That didn't really work either. You get kind of like a gross splotchy look. And then I'm like, okay, no problem. I've got black embossing powder. I'll just cover it really quickly in black embossing powder and we'll heat set it. Nope. That didn't work either. Okay, so we're going to pivot. We are now going to do the same stamping exactly, but I'm going to white emboss it on black matte cardstock. This is the same black matte that I use for matting my panels, so that the colors match. And then I'm going to trim it as small as I can, so it's not stealing all of the show. But honestly, this card really tested my card making skills. And I've been making cards for not forever, but for quite a while. And I have a lot of videos on this channel. I make 2 videos a week. Like I make a lot of things. So this card tested my abilities to pivot very, very seriously. But we did get there, and I think that the card turned out stunning. And I think that that's a big part of this, is not letting it make you so angry that you throw it away. Now, don't ever hesitate to walk away from something if it's making you angry, because there's no point in being frustrated. This is supposed to be a fun, project, but I do believe that pretty much everything's salvageable. So, we just had to pivot a whole bunch of times, and that's okay. I'm okay with that. So at this point, I wanted to hide the glue a little bit more, and I wanted to, I need shimmer and shine on all my cards. That's just how I roll. I love it. It's one of my favorite things ever. So I brought in just my glue, my liquid glue, and I added it to the center of the flowers. And then I brought in some mica flakes and some rock candy glitter. And that's honestly just to add some extra shine. You don't need it. This is completely unnecessary. However, if you're me, glitter is always necessary. So I did feel the need to add it to the centers just to hide the adhesive underneath and to add a little bit more interest to the flowers, because now the sentiment is going to steal your eye a little bit. And so I want your eye to move. So by adding something a little more shiny, hopefully it catches the eye, and that'll help with how this card layout, kind of the design ended up. And then I wanted just a touch more rock candy glitter. So I added just little stamen from the flower centers, is what I'm going to call them. They're not drawn in the image. I just added them there, and I added rock candy over top of that. And that just also pulls your eye a little bit, gives you a little bit more to focus on. That's kind of what I was thinking with it. But like I said, this step is completely unnecessary. It's just that I wanted more glitter on my card, so I added it because I can. And then I am going to just gently pop up the sentiment. There's no rhyme or reason for this other than I like dimension. And this is the only element that's going to be popped up. And these are the thin 3D foam squares in black. So they're like 1/8 of an inch. They're tiny. It's not a ton of dimension. It's just a smidge of dimension. So it gives me just a little bit of something extra. And I am going to place that right over top of where I had stamped that original sentiment, so that you can't see that at all. But now that is going to be more eye-catching than I had intended, which again, it's fine. The card is beautiful. I love where we ended up, but it was a struggle to get here. But that's okay. I mean, not everything is, the easiest card to make. And I think that I end up appreciating it more when it challenges my mindset. So I did have a lot of fun creating this. And yeah, so then I'm just going to adhere it down, adhere all the layers. Oh, and that stamp set is from Simon Says Stamp. It's the Beautiful Friends Sentiment stamp set. I got that a while ago. I honestly don't know if it's still available or not. If it is, I will have it linked and listed down below for you. If it's not, I'll find something similar. But any sentiment here would do. I just noticed I had no birthday cards left. So I have been kind of trying to rectify that and make sure that I have more birthday cards on hand. So then I just adhered it, and this is the card. I did take those extra pieces that I trimmed off of the alcohol ink panel, and I adhered them on the inside. I will show that to you in a second here, but I love where we ended up, though I am a little sad I couldn't get the alcohol lift ink to work, but that's okay. We'll try again in a different video and we'll see what we can do. But I think that this card turned out stunning in the end on its own anyways. So I would love to know what you guys think. Leave me a like, leave me a comment, and consider subscribing if you haven't. I do new videos every Monday and Thursday. Thank you so much, guys, and I will see you again very soon. Bye-bye for now.